or develop office buildings. They know the properties. They know the market. So when you look to the future, look to Chose Investments. Online at kjosinvestments.com. ChoseInvestments.com. All right. As I mentioned earlier, the annual American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness Community Walks are coming up on September 14th. To tell us about the organization, tell us about the Walk to Fight Suicide, we're joined today by the area director of the Dakotas chapter of the foundation. That would be Samantha Bruers. Samantha, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Glad to talk about this today. The chairperson of the Out of the Darkness Walk for Fargo-Moorhead is Sarah Dixon-Hackey, who's with us as well today.
Hi, Scott. Thanks again.
Thank you. So, first of all, the walk. What's Samantha, maybe tell us a little bit about why the foundation chose the walk as a way to get this conversation going.
I would love to tell you about the walk. The Out of the Darkness walks happen all over the country, all over the state, and we've been having this walk in Fargo-Moorhead for more than 13 years, so that's pretty exciting. We want our community to come out and walk with us. When we started these walks so long ago, they said, no one's going to walk for mental health, no one's going to walk for suicide prevention, but we proved them wrong. Nationally, there's people walking all over the country. There's people walking all over the state. And we have more than 2,000 walkers here in Fargo-Moorhead coming out to show our community that we need to talk about mental health and we need to take this seriously. So we will be walking on Sunday, September 15th at the Scheels Arena in support of suicide prevention and for mental health.
See, there's no excuse then. We can't blame the weather. We can walk because we'll be inside Scheels Arena, so that's fantastic. Sarah, talk a little bit about these walks and what happens.
Well, it's really an event when we think about the day itself. It rolls out to be the walk, which is, of course, about a 5K. It's a little under 3 miles. But prior to the walk happening, we have a 2-hour window where we really invite vendors, we say, but I would say more business and mental health and other collaborators from the community to come out, have a table, share information so that the participants who come during those 2 hours are really invited to learn more about the resources that are in their own community. And I think what we've really also tried to tie into it is that we make it very family friendly. So we actually have a kids area for activities. We want this conversation to be something that is inclusive, not something that's held behind closed doors or that only a certain generation is going to have. So we want to make it as inviting as possible. So again, that 2-hour window from 12 p.m. to 2 o'clock is really reserved for educational kind of immersement and also for community and engaging with others who are in the same kind of part of life of wanting to learn more about mental health.
Yeah, the stigma is deadly when it comes to suicide because people feel like they can't talk about it when, in fact, I had a friend this summer that committed suicide and talking to a lot of mutual friends about it, you're like, some people are sort of walking on eggshells about not wanting to talk about it. The families obviously feeling bad about it and, sometimes they don't even have a funeral. And I said one time, you go to a funeral, somebody died of cancer, you say, isn't cancer terrible? It's just awful. I hate cancer. When are we going to do something about it, right? Or somebody has a heart attack, you talk about, heart disease, isn't that, whatever it is, right? You lost a friend, you lost a loved one, and you talk about the reason that you lost them, this particular thing. Suicide is sort of like, everybody looks at their shoes. Nobody wants to talk about it, and I think that's just really unfortunate because suicide is no different than anything else. I mean, I don't believe anybody, does this without some sort of mental health problem, right? They're carrying some kind of a burden that could be taken on, but the shame, the stigma that comes with it is really tough. What do you do to combat that, Samantha? How do you take that on?
It's so important that loss survivors know that they are supported in their grief journey. Suicide is a health issue. We need to speak about suicide as a health issue. The more that we create this culture around mental health, the more people will come forward and get the help and support that they need. It's also so important that loss survivors know that they're not alone and that they are supported, again, nationally, across the state of North Dakota, but here in Fargo-Moorhead as well. If you've ever lost a loved one to suicide, you know that it's a very unique type of grief, and you need to know that you are supported.
It's got to be the ultimate second-guessing grief, right? You just think you could have done something. Why didn't I notice? Why didn't I, right? You're going through all those questions.
Most definitely, and it's complex, and we always think we're human, so we always want to reason why, but it's more complicated than that. But if you are a loss survivor, please know the Fargo-Moorhead community supports you. And thanks to the supporters and walkers of the Out of the Darkness walks, there's many resources here in the community that are available for you. International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day is a healing conference that happens in multiple countries, multiple states, but we've been hosting it in Fargo-Moorhead for more than a decade. It's November 23rd, and loss survivors can come together, heal, and connect, and truly just be together and talk openly about their loss. And again, if you're a loss survivor, you are supported.
Sarah, I've heard people say that the resources for people that are struggling, that might be having thoughts of suicide or whatever, are pretty good. Sometimes when you have a problem, that there aren't necessarily the resources to deal with the problem, but in this case, there are. There is help available. But the bigger issue is just being strong enough to say, I'm thinking about this. I need help. Tell somebody, right? I mean, that's really what we need to tell people, isn't it? Just to not feel like you are unique. That this is a problem, a common problem, and it is a mental health problem that you can get help for, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think Sam really touched on it, which is that we really want to keep emphasizing this idea that it's mental health, but also it's a medical issue. And any other medical issue, if you had heart disease, if you had high blood pressure, you would go to the doctor. You wouldn't have a lot of hesitation. You'd have family members saying, hey, let's go, get you an appointment. And again, because of the social stigma that I think has existed for so long, we resist that because we don't want to draw attention to what we think is not appropriate for us to be going through. And so there are lots of different resources in the community. Again, we need to simply just keep talking about them and keep educating people on what's available so that they do hopefully feel more, or when they feel more available to that they're going to take advantage of them.
I have someone I know that had a lot of childhood trauma. And after that childhood trauma has literally had almost daily suicidal thoughts since 14 years of age. So that's not his fault, right? I mean, it's not his. It's nothing wrong with him. As you say, that is a medical issue. That from that trauma, there was therefore, issues in the brain that caused him to have this that needs attention, right? And yet, for him, for those around him to acknowledge that is very difficult. They don't want to do that, but that's in my mind the what could break this wide open. It's just to more and more have people realize that, hey, this happens. In fact, talked to the law enforcement official, Fargo PD Chief Dave Todd, not long ago, mid-July, about someone that had attempted suicide and the resources that were put forward to that person. They just posted on Facebook that they were thinking about committing suicide or were going to commit suicide, and enormous law enforcement help. And I called to compliment him. I couldn't believe that there was that amount of help available. And, 6, squad cars and searchers and drones and all kinds of stuff. And I said, how often does this happen? And he said, well, let me look. This was the middle of July. 55 times something similar had happened in one half of July. So this is a common problem, which is, in my mind, another reason to say, don't feel like you're alone. This isn't weird. Anything else you want to tell us, Samantha?
In all of our education programs at AFSP, we deliver a lot of education programs here in the community. We talk a lot about how we need to have a conversation and we need to look for the warning signs. If you're worried about someone, if they're talking about suicide, if they're acting differently, if you just feel it in your gut that something is wrong, reach out and have a caring, honest conversation. That it will help you judge where they're at, and it can help you get them to the resources that they need. And the same goes for you. If you are not feeling like yourself and you're struggling, reach out, have a caring conversation, and get the resources that you need.
Find a walk near you, afsp.org. I know there's many. In addition to the big one here in Fargo-Moorhead, afsp.org. Sarah and Samantha, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Glad we're talking about it. More coming up on What's on Your Mind.